Well, it's wonderful to have both of you gentlemen here, both of your friends.
Indeed.
You're opposite sides of the aisle, Democrat, Republican. Mm-hmm. You work together on some really important issues related to religious freedom and other important issues. And as we just saw, businesses are responding to the issues of religious freedom, both in their workplaces but around the world. So, you know, the video of this is going to be shared with companies all around the world. So as, you know, leaders in the U.S. government with a focus on international, why, from your perspectives, is this important for businesses to engage with? So, Senator Coons, can I ask you to kick off?
Sure. First, thank you so much, Brian. Thanks for both moderating today, for convening, and thank you to all of you for the time and the effort and the heart, the soul that you're putting into this conference. I spent 8 years working for a global manufacturing business. And although we were US headquartered, we had operations in more than 50 countries, and we had a global workforce that came from an incredible array of backgrounds, educational experiences, geographies, and beliefs. And it was a science-based company, one with a lot of engineers. And so chatting about faith wasn't a common part of the workplace. But I was part of a diversity work group that tried to change our corporate culture to make it more respectful and inclusive. And one of the things that needed to be on the table was the diversity of experience in terms of belief, freedom to be someone who was an atheist or humanist, freedom to be a practicing Muslim or Buddhist, a Christian, Jew, Muslim, of whatever type. And this arose as a conversation because we had invested a huge amount as a company in relocating someone from another part of the world to Eastern Maryland. And after 6 months, that person left, saying that I don't feel welcome here as a person of my faith. Yeah. And that precipitated a conversation about unintended signals that this very skilled individual had received inside our company, that somehow their faith wasn't valued, wasn't welcome, wasn't cherished. We were making significant strides in including women in the engineering workplace, workplace that had historically skewed very heavily towards men, including African Americans in a culture that had previously not been welcoming. But as a company, we hadn't really been thinking about faith as an issue in the workplace. And I think it has three critical roles. One, people are free to bring their best selves to their workplace when they think some of the most important aspects of who they are also welcome and cherished. Second, there's a lot of people around the world who are seeking liberty. And liberty, as we've experienced it in the United States, most profoundly is connected to freedom of conscience and experience in terms of belief and practice. And so it is really definitional to what it means to be American. But last, to the point you just made in a brief presentation there, people are more innovative. They're more creative when they feel respected and welcome, when they don't feel embattled. Yeah. And if you feel like you have to divide yourself, you have a private life that is spiritual and a work life that is utterly not, and where you feel embattled, you're not going to bring your best ideas. You're not going to fully participate in your team. So I believe that religious freedom, respect for a wide range of beliefs or those who have no belief, is critical to the workplace, it's critical to our country, and it's critical to a more productive and inclusive world.
Yeah, so it's a bottom line issue.
It is a bottom line issue.
You have top talent leaving if they don't feel included.
Correct.
Senator Lankford.
So let me walk through. By the way, thank you as well for leading out. Thanks for everybody participating in this conversation. The concept of religious liberty, we forget at times, was a pretty radical concept 3 centuries ago. If you go back to 1789, when America was founded in our constitutional system, most of the world looked at our Constitution and then this brand new Bill of Rights that was put in place that guaranteed the right for people to be able to have a faith, live their faith, or to have no faith at all and be respected as an American. Most people around the world, as leaders in the 1700s, said that will never, ever work. That will never work. You have the faith of the leader has to be the faith of the people, or the people and the leader will not be united together. This grand experiment of can any individual choose to have any faith and to be able to live their faith and still have a national connection, for well over a century, no one really followed us into that. And now there's a lot of dialogue worldwide still about this one issue. Do the faith of the people have to be the faith of the leaders? So when I go back to a business conversation, I actually want to ask business leaders, in your workplace, on the issue of religious liberty, do you function under, I would dare say, an American type system where in your workplace, people can have any faith, can live their faith, can have no faith at all, or can change their faith at a workplace the same as it is in our country? Or is it more like what it is in China? Because for some people in their workplace, we're very aware that China holds the sense of you have to be Chinese first. If your faith is bigger than your Chinese identity, then your faith needs to be subsidiary to your Chinese identity. We're watching this transition in some countries like Turkey, a longtime NATO ally, but suddenly we can't figure out where Turkey's going in the issue of religious liberty. So I ask people in their workplace, as a leader, are you leading a country, a company, that you're asking people to put their faith to be subservient to the company value, to the company culture, to say, I'm sorry, no, in our company, this is our culture? Or is it the Chinese model? Or is it more of an American model where you respect all individuals and to say you can have any faith, live that faith, you don't have to hide your faith in the workplace because we're an open conversation kind of place? Again, I dare say 3 centuries ago, people said that would never work, and I still run into people in the corporate world that say, I'm sorry, no, everyone, faith is very divisive, we can't have you expressing faith here. Well, 3 centuries ago, we'd have thought that'd be true, but we'd love for you to be able to catch up to this concept of religious liberty now.
Well, excellent points, and I just want to throw a question out about your workplace. And there's a fabulous... No, they'll like the question. No, there's a fabulous video. I mean, you did a Face the Nation interview together a little while ago, and you talked about faith in your workplace. And for many corporations, they're afraid if faith comes into the workplace, it's going to divide us.
Right. We're about as divided a workplace as you can find.
But what does faith do does faith add more division, or does it bring people together?
Well, I'll just briefly say one of the best experiences I've had in a decade as a senator was co-leading with James the weekly Senate prayer breakfast. Our politics, our policy positions are widely divergent. I bet you if you...
Chris votes wrong all the time, all the time.
I love canceling him out every day. We'll come in Monday after a weekend at home and, you know, he goes like that, we go like that. And then we'll get to talking about our families, about what's happening, about challenges facing, you know, our mothers-in-law or our spouses or our kids. And one of the things that has helped us become friends across a very severe partisan divide. I invited James to come and be the keynote speaker at the annual prayer breakfast in Delaware. He invited me to join him at an event in Tulsa. I'd never been to Oklahoma. He's been to Delaware many, many times, I'm sure. But if you can break bread together, pray together, and reflect together on a shared sense of Scripture, of God's place in your life, and of your calling to service, then those policy differences, while still real, make a less significant impact on your day-to-day heart. It is less painful to serve alongside someone I genuinely like and respect. When we get people who literally can't respect each other, who think that what they are about is destroying the country that I love, or they disrespect the Constitution I'm pledged to uphold. When you serve with people where you have a difference that sharp, it is very hard to make progress. When you serve alongside someone who you see as a person with a family and values and who cares about the country and the world, then you can begin to find areas of commonality and to work together. Literally the best friends I've had in my decade in the Senate, I got to know who are Republicans. I got to know through the prayer breakfast. And the experience of leading the prayer breakfast with James was challenging and rewarding. And literally just yesterday morning, he walked us through his own personal experience with a particular passage in Scripture, which I then shared with my mother-in-law, who's going through the grief of losing her husband of 60 years. Those kinds of experiences, if you can have that experience in the workplace and welcome that kind of experience in the workplace, it weaves people together in very positive ways, in my view.
Yeah. I would say the issue of faith to me is a really fascinating issue, how some people perceive faith. For leadership that they don't personally practice faith, they see other people the same way. To say, well, I don't practice faith, I've taken that off, so other people should do the same thing. I was like, we're in a country and live in a culture where we celebrate the rights of people to have a faith, live their faith, change their faith, or have no faith. So because a corporate leader may have no faith, they can't impose that no faith on other people. I try to explain to people, if your faith is something that you can take on and off, that's not a faith, that's a hobby, okay? A hobby is something I can do on weekends that affects my weekends, but really doesn't affect my weekdays. A faith is something that dominates every relationship that I have. How I see other people, how I treat other people, how I engage in areas of disagreement is all deeply rooted in my own personal faith. And it's not right for anyone in any workplace or environment to say, I'm sorry, you have to take off that faith, as if that's a jacket you can remove. This is not something on the outside, this is something on the inside I can't just remove and set aside. And so if you challenge people to be able to live the principles of your faith, even in the workplace, that gives people freedom to be able to then carry their own conscience and to be able to then respect other people. Again, this goes back to just the most basic principle. As an American, I shouldn't be intimidated that someone next to me has a different faith than me. I have the right to live my faith. They have the right to be able to live their faith. I can't impose on them, I'm sorry, I'm uncomfortable because you have a different faith. I want to celebrate their right to be able to do that, because I want my right to be able to live my faith also to be honored.
So thank you. So one last question, thinking internationally, I began by saying these global companies have these faith employee groups. They're opening up worldwide. What would you say to these global companies? Is that something that they want to, sort of come out of the closet with? Sometimes they, hide their light under a bushel, but, is that something for companies to celebrate, that they've added faith, this faith-friendly aspect to their diversity, equity, and inclusion, which sometimes people think is, a political agenda, but we're seeing it that it's religion's part of that. Should they export that? Is that a good thing?
One of the conversations we had, this is many years ago now, at the company where I worked, was whether or not veterans and veteran status was an affiliation group, because it wasn't a born characteristic. It wasn't a gender or race, something that you don't choose. It was, in most cases, chosen national service. Absolutely, we thought. Veterans have had a different experience. They bring different things to the workplace. They bring different skills, and at times they experience our work differently. That opened the door to a conversation about faith groups. And I think companies that are seriously considering adding affinity groups, either of those who are atheists and practice no faith or those who are of a particular faith, should be bold, should take the opportunity and take the chance, discuss it, work through it internally. But I think they'll find it enriches the workplace experience.
I think, honestly, companies have the opportunity to be able to take the lead, especially international companies, to be able to say, I'm aware of where we are in the nation that we're functioning in, but in our company, we're going to honor basic human rights and dignity. To honor the basic human rights and dignity of each individual, what our founders called your most precious possession, your faith. To not try to reach into someone at the workplace and remove their most precious possession and to say, I'm sorry, you can't have this at the workplace, but to actually encourage that right for people to be able to have a faith, change their faith, live their faith, or have no faith at all in a workplace setting with an international company is an enormous gift and responsibility. If you're going to celebrate human rights and dignity in all of its forms, you have to recognize the right of people to be able to have a faith and to be able to live their faith in whatever country that you function under, and to say, I'm aware of where we are outside these walls, but in this company, we're going to honor human rights and dignity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I think speaking on behalf of everyone, it's just so encouraging to see how faith bridges divides. You've shared about that. And, any last thoughts you have to share on this topic of how faith can bring people together rather than be a divisive issue?
I'll just say two things. American companies around the world are often at the cutting edge of fighting corruption, of advocating for the rights and liberties that really have made America, the United States, so successful and so innovative. We shouldn't leave behind this foundational faith that really was at the core of why so many have come to this country from so many places around the world over centuries. is to seek the freedom to be able to experience and practice their faith. It would be, I think, a missed opportunity to also show that difference about what it means to be an American business around the world, or a business of whatever background. It will contribute to innovation. It will contribute. I feel more comfortable taking risks legislatively in our work with someone who I respect and know than I do with someone who's really a stranger to me and where I have questions about their motives. That's true whether we were trying to work on innovating an engineering solution to a product, or whether we're trying to tackle immigration or gun violence or tax policy. Knowing each other, respecting each other is deeper when you know each other's faith and when you've been able to be comfortable learning about and knowing each other's faith.
Yeah. I would just say international companies have a unique responsibility. In the place where you choose to go, you are offered by many countries around the world incentives to be able to come and to be able to do business here. Just because you can go there doesn't mean you should go there. So the question should be, in that conversation about you have all these incentives, to also bring up this issue: if we come and function here, will my employees have the right to be able to live any faith of their choosing and to be able to practice that in the workplace? Or when we come into this place, what will be the standards for that? Again, a lot of companies talk about a lot of human rights issues, but for whatever reason choose to not bring this up. In 2015, we added into our trade policy what's called the Trade Promotion Authority, an amendment that I brought to put into our trade negotiations to say, before we do trade deals with any other country, we talk about the issue of religious liberty with that country. Why? Because it's an economic conversation, but it's also a human rights conversation. It's a point of leverage for us. So as companies consider where they're going to do business in different parts of the world, where they're going to do manufacturing and engagement, I'm not distracting you from going any place in the world, but why would you not raise the issue and the question of how will my employees that work here be honored in their basic human rights? And if they're not honored in their human rights, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to go there as a company? Or are we going to demand that they actually start to attain some of those human rights working in this place? So it's an engagement from the company that they can be a vehicle for good around the world, and to push back on leaders that say, I'm sorry, everyone has to be exactly the same in this country and it has to be able to match the leader of the country. It shouldn't be true for the country nor the company to allow them to be able to have that kind of freedom.
Thank you. Well, Senator Coons, Senator Lankford, I mean, we'd love to have this conversation continue. We have a lot on the schedule today.
Well, just watch us on C-SPAN later. So we'll continue from there. So yeah.
We'll keep it. But I mean, you've nailed it. You have made the case. This is a case. This is hopeful. This is something people can really do. They can build religious freedom, not just talk about it, advocate for it. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I think Ambassador Brownback is going to come out. He has something special to say.
That's great.